Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Life Shift podcast. I am here with Kyle. Hello, Kyle.
Hello, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for wanting to be a part of the Life Shift podcast. I never really thought, maybe even 5 years ago, that I would have the opportunity to talk to so many people about these pivotal moments in their lives that has really changed everything. So I'm just so honored that strangers essentially have come and wanted to share these conversations with me.
Sure, I'm happy to be here and actually share my story and what changed me, how I got from where I was to where I am today, and it's pretty interesting.
I think it's so valuable because the Life Shift podcast really stems from my own personal experience of feeling very alone in my circumstances. When I was a kid, my mom died in a motorcycle accident, and everything at that moment, my parents were divorced, lived in different states, and everything changed in my life. But it was also a time period where people weren't really talking about grief or mental health or any of those things. And I felt very alone. Like I was the only person that ever had a parent die, and I didn't know how to navigate that world. And so, really, when I started this, I was hoping that we could have these conversations where people out there listening might hear your story, might hear someone else's story, and feel a little less alone in their journey, and maybe feel a little hope or inspiration that they can move through that moment and become whatever they want to be, or however that may look for them. So, like you said, your story has these changes, and it's changed you from before and after. And it's just, I know there's someone out there listening that will hear your story and go, okay, I'm not the only one to go through something like this. So
Right.
it's
And
just
I think
such an honor.
there's a couple life shifts that people go through, like some that they don't have control over, and then
Right.
some maybe that they do. And I don't know if you really differentiate between those. So I think some of my pivotal moments were some I didn't have any control over, and obviously it
Mm-hmm.
shifted my life. And then as you get older, things happen. You're like, oh, I do have control, and I can do something about it and move forward from there. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the experience I had with my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. And you know what? Coming into this, I was a little bit naive thinking, okay, yeah, one life shift changed everything. And it's like, no, as humans, we encounter a lot of things, whether, like you said, these external factors that kind of knock us off our knock us off our feet, or throw us in the water, or whatever that might be. And people have these internal fires, which I didn't really understand for a long period of my life, because I was in this fight or flight mode for decades, because I didn't process that grief. And I didn't realize that I had as much power as I do to change my life until, I finally got therapy and all those things that helped, and go, oh,
Sure.
okay, you can have your own fire and you can have your own life shifts that you dictate. So that's a great point.
I agree. Well, and I think a little bit of that too. Maybe subconsciously we're afraid to make those changes because you're scared of what's on the other side of that too, and come
For
to
sure.
certain realizations.
For sure. And for me, it was like, I was afraid of taking any chance, because if there was a chance that I was going to fail, in my 8-year-old mind that I carried with me, I thought my dad would also abandon me. Like I felt like the death of a parent feels like at that age, it feels like abandonment. And so it was always that fear cycle, like you describe. It's like, what could happen? I don't know. Could be bad. And I don't want to do it. So I'm
Sure.
glad I did it, but it
Sure.
was right
So
there.
when I was younger, I didn't have a parent die, but something I did feel alone because when I was 4 years old, my mother was recently divorced. And so she was living as a single mom, me
Mm.
at 4 years old, and my older brother at 6 years old, and my younger sister at 3 years old. And one day we're just playing at my house. I'm upstairs playing around, and I hear the doorbell ring. And this is something that normally doesn't happen in our house. And I got really excited. So I run downstairs to see what's going on. And as soon as I get to the bottom of the stairs, like standing before me is this 6'3" tall man with like a big brown beard and bifocal glasses. And I'm just stunned, like scared, like looking at this intimidating figure. And my mom, who had answered the door, went to go get a glass of water or something like that. So it's just me and this intimidating figure. And I did what I thought any 4 year old would do. I just greeted him with like a little punch in the leg and I giggled. And what this man did was he made a fist too and he punched little Kyle right in the stomach. And I keeled over and I
Oh,
couldn't
wow.
breathe. I couldn't scream out. And tears are rushing down my face. And so nobody heard. So what this man did, he didn't try to comfort me, didn't try to do anything. He just walked around me into the kitchen and I just scampered upstairs. And that was my first meeting with the man who would eventually become my stepfather,
Mm.
Ben, or my sister and I would later call him Triple B, Big Bad Ben. And that's kind of how my life, that's a big life shift that I didn't have control over. That's how my life started um, at 4 years old, going on,
Yeah.
until I was like out of high school. And so
Wow. Yeah, that
just,
really can shape someone.
sure. And so as I got older, I don't want to get in the grisly details, but things didn't get easier for me.
Mm.
And there's, sticks and things like that. But as I got into high school, I really started to rebel out. And also, one of the big problems too is my mom. You would think, well, didn't your mom do anything about this? And like the simple answer or the easy answer was no, because she thought it was very, very important for us to have a father in our lives, because my biological father was out of the picture. Seemingly, he lived in Florida, and he sent checks on birthdays and Christmas, things like that, but he really wasn't in our lives. And so my mom was hell-bent on getting a father for us, and she was
Mm.
excusing a lot of behavior, thinking like boys will be boys and things like that. And as I was getting older and as I was growing up through adolescence, teenager, I thought this was love. I thought this is what a father was supposed to be. Like, I'm dead serious, man.
You didn't
I
have
like
any other examples.
I didn't I really thought that I thought all men's dads were like this at home. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know any better. So, and my mom was telling me like, this is love. That, like, she even made us call him dad, and like, tell him
Mm.
that we loved him, like crazy stuff. And I thought this was completely normal growing up. I really did.
Yeah.
And so as I'm getting
But it was
older,
open. Like you guys, everyone was kind of like it was everyone was aware that he was doing this to you guys.
well, in the close family, so like,
Okay.
me and my brother and my sister and my mom, but like on the outside, my mom would pretend like
Mm-hmm.
that everything
Yeah.
was okay, everything's fine. And as a little kid, I didn't know it was wrong. Like, I
Right.
thought it was normal. Like, I thought like, hey, this guy's just a jerk. You know what I mean? I'm supposed to love him. My mom tells me I'm supposed to love him. So this is the way it is. And then as I got older, like in high school, I eventually started to rebel out a lot, because I didn't know, because I thought I was the problem. I thought, it was my fault. And
Mm.
so, and I didn't know who to turn to or what to do. So I got in fights all the time in high school. I started drinking a lot in high school. And eventually I got expelled from high school for getting in fights and not like skipping school. And so I had to repeat what my junior year over again. And again, my mom was like blaming me, and I couldn't fathom, because all of my friends in high school, were only my friends. I kind of gravitated to people that were not a good influence because I didn't think
Mm.
I deserved better. But I couldn't
Right.
understand why they weren't getting kicked out of school. I couldn't understand why they weren't getting expelled. And it was because they didn't have the same home life I had. But I still couldn't realize it. So I was just so upset at myself because I knew I was smart and I couldn't understand what was going on.
Yeah.
And so after I got expelled, I come back again for my 5th year, and I'm doing the same stuff, same things, getting in fights. And I just want all this madness to stop. And so what I decided to do in the middle of class one day, I got a test back that I failed. And I was just so mad because I knew if I would have like applied myself, I would have been
Right.
able to pass. And I was like, I'm just so sick of this. I need to do something about this. So what I did was I left school in the middle of the day, and I went to go turn myself into drug rehab as a 17-year-old.
Wow.
And it wasn't like I was a drug addict. I obviously I had problems with, alcohol. I was just using it as an excuse, but I didn't know what else to do. Like,
Yeah.
I thought I was the problem. So how do I fix this problem? And so it's actually not really funny, but when I got there as a 17-year-old, you just can't say, hey, here I am. I can turn
Right.
myself in. They go, you need to be court ordered, or you have to have a parent or guardian turn you in. And so my mom, who actually worked in the building, it was a big hospital, and they had a drug rehab wing for juveniles. And I knew my mom worked in there. So she came down, she actually signed me in, and she was really relieved that I was actually doing something, because she wasn't about to admit that, your stepfather was the problem,
Mm.
and I'm not blaming him, I mean, he's the reasonable on why a lot of these things happen. But we'll
It's
get to
hard.
that
Yeah.
part when I had that realization. And so I'm in drug rehab, and I actually felt safe at that moment because I'm away from him. I'm away from my like bad influence friends.
Yeah.
And so, but because I had to go to drug rehab, I missed another year of high school. So actually, when I got out, I go back to high school. Now, Matt, I'm in my 6th year of high school. And
Mm.
this is one of the pivotal moments. Two amazing things actually happened when I went back to high school. When I went back to high school, they stuck me into something called in-school suspension. That's where you sit inside a room. You can't talk. You can't leave. They bring all your assignments to you. You eat lunch in there. You get like 2 bathroom breaks that are chaperoned, by the teacher. But as luck would have it, you can actually talk to the teacher that's in there. And the
Mm-hmm.
teacher in there, his name was Mr. Brady, and he was the first male role model. Actually, took me aside and he goes, because he got to know me. I was in like his class in school suspension for my last senior year, and he told me that you could do something with your life, that you're smart. And Matt, this actually like blew my mind. This is the first time that somebody took the time to tell me that you're worth something, that you can
Yeah.
actually do something with your life. And I was actually blown away because, like I said before, I thought all men were like the way my stepfather was. So I was like amazed that this was going on. Like I was like, oh my god! And like something inside me, he like put his planted a seed inside me. Was like, maybe I can do something with my
Yeah.
life. Not that I really as a 17, 8 year old, I didn't really take action at that moment, but it was so nice to have somebody believe him. Like, hey, somebody is in my corner. Like
Was
somebody's
it hard
there.
for you to believe him?
I knew that there was a little something inside of me, but no one's ever told
Yeah.
me about it. So maybe I was just trying to convince myself, but it was nice to have a confirmation like, hey, you can do
Yeah.
something with your life. You can do something.
Yeah.
So,
It it's really interesting though, because growing up and absorbing that for years upon years, I can see how someone might act out, but also all along, it sounds like you still held on that thread of humanity and that like you were worth more than something. Cause I can't imagine someone that's acting out and going like really angry, I guess, kind of getting that anger out in a different way would then also have that self-awareness that you had to go, I need to like fix this. And I don't think I can do it myself. And then go try to check yourself into something like that. So like that's a big thing that I don't think is that common. I think it's just like people that are in your circumstance that you were in. I almost imagine a lot of the people that I've talked to, it's kind of like you just absorb that and then you just place the blame on everything else. Nothing's your fault. Where it sounds like you were taking some ownership of like, I'm doing this, but I can't stop doing this.
right.
So that in itself is like super impressive, which then led me to ask you like, I mean, I guess it makes sense why you would believe your teacher, but I think a lot of people be like, what are you talking about? Like, no, I'm a mess. Like, nobody cares. My stepfather tells me every day,
Right.
but nobody cares.
And
So,
I didn't have anybody else to go to. It's like back then, I mean, I'm 46 now. So those teachers weren't like looking for like things that were
no,
going on. And nobody was like saying, hey, are you okay? Like, you must be acting like this for some reason. It
yeah,
was just
nobody was
like,
talking
oh,
about anything back then
no.
either.
Right.
This is what, like mid 90s, right? So,
Exactly.
or like early mid 90s, people weren't talking about like things going on at home. People weren't talking about mental health stuff. I mean, we're very similar in age. So same thing with me. I mean, I got to my 30s when I realized all the things that were wrong with me. So that's kind of why I'm commending you in this sense of like at 16, 17, you had this awareness of like something has to change. And I think it's possible.
Right. But also, so, I mean, not to get too ahead of myself, I always thought it was external things needed to change, not really change inside myself. And
Mm.
also, I was blaming myself for it. I still thought there was something wrong with me. So I had to fix me too. And that's what I wanted to do. Like, I didn't have the insight to like look inside, okay, Kyle, who do you want to be? What do you want? I just wanted to
Yeah.
change something like and stop the madness. But yeah, and what I guess I'm trying to take credit away from that, what you're trying to give me, but yeah, there was
Yeah.
a little something inside me that wanted something more to my life and wanted something to change and wanted to be better.
You could have been 100% destructive. You weren't 100% destructive. I mean, maybe you were a lot percent destructive, but
Right.
there was something in you that was like, wait, and maybe it was subconscious, maybe it was something you picked up from your mother, like whatever it may be from other parties that are in your life. But yeah, I think there's something to celebrate there just in itself, because I think a lot of people that grow up in those circumstances will just ride that, unfortunately, because that's what they know and that's how it goes. And it's just like, well, that's my life. But something was inching you. And I'm guessing that's probably what that teacher saw in you too. Like there is potential in this kid. Like
Right.
something's wrong, but there's also potential. So let me talk to him,
Right.
Mr.
And
Brady.
similar to you, I know how you had a teacher who changed your life and you reached out to her a while ago about, recognizing you. I actually reached out to him a while
Mm.
ago too and thanked him. And he said, oh, of course I remember you. That's great. You're doing well and things like that. So it was nice to reconnect and let him know that he really changed my life a lot.
Yeah,
And he was just being
teachers.
him. Like he
Yeah,
wasn't trying, like just
exactly.
being him. That's what is crazy.
Exactly. Teachers, I mean, they're with us for so much of our lives, when we're in the school day, and they see so much that maybe those of us that had this home life that might have been tough, they see us, in this other space trying to do other things. And same, like you said, I reached out to my third grade teacher. So I was 8, when she met me, and she was trying to like help heal this little kid who was just so very lost. And then, yeah, I want to say I was in my 30s, I reached back out to her, and like, she knew who I was. She remembered things from the class. And you're like, how do you do that? You've
Right.
just been teaching for like 30 something years. So, I mean, there was something that must have stuck out because he also remembered you, which is impactful as
It was
well.
really great. And so after he planted that seed in me, when I wasn't hanging out in school suspension, they eventually left me out. And by this time, I'm 18, 19 years old. I'm in my 6th year of high school, and I'm still kind of I want to keep my head down because I can't get in any trouble. Like when I was a juvenile, I got in trouble, arrested for fights and things like that. But now that I'm an adult, if I get arrested, like I'll go to serious jail. So, and I was deathly terrified of that. And so I'm
Mm.
trying to keep my head down, trying to be on the straight and narrow. But one day, I guess I was making fun of the wrong person, just having a smart mouth. And I was messing with the wrong kid outside of school one day, and he wanted to fight me. And I'm trying to tell him, no, 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 I don't want to fight. You know what I mean? A, he could
Right.
probably beat me up for sure. And B, I didn't want to get in any trouble. So I'm trying to get away from him. But before I can get away from him, there's a huge crowd around us, about 150 kids. This kid is like trying to grab at me. I'm just like running around in a circle. And before I know it, I'm grabbed out of the circle of kids and I'm arrested. And I'm arrested for like assault, disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace. And now I'm going to like real jail. I'm in real trouble, even
Right.
though I didn't even do anything wrong. And so my mom won't give me a lawyer because she doesn't believe that I didn't do anything wrong from my past and everything like that. And so what I decided to do
That's
is I
tough.
was like, I know I didn't do anything wrong. So what I'm going to do is, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to represent myself. And so what happens is we're in, and I'm fast forwarding through a lot of things, but it's fine. What happens is we're in court one day. It's just me, the prosecutor, the judge, and then the arresting officer. And court starts, and the prosecutor starts asking the arresting officer some questions, saying, "Do you see the person that was involved in this altercation?" And the officer points me out, and the prosecutor asks a few more questions, and then the judge goes, "Kyle, do you want to ask the officer some questions?" And in my head, I'm very very confident, but as I start speaking, my mouth starts shaking, my voice is trembling, but eventually get enough nerve, and I start asking him some questions. I go, "Where were you when you first saw this alleged incident?" He goes, "Oh, I was sitting in my police cruiser." And I go, "Well, where was that relative to where you saw this incident?" He goes, "Oh, about 150 yards." And I go, "What did you see?" He goes, "Oh, I saw about 150 kids surrounding you guys." And I go, "So you're telling me from sitting in your police cruiser from 150 yards away through like 150 kids, you saw me strike somebody else?" And he goes, "Well, no, I can't say that for sure." And
Mm.
that was it. The judge just found me not guilty. Case was dismissed. I was just so happy. And what I remember at that point is that what Mr. Brady told me before is like, if you believe in yourself and if you push forward, good things will happen. And so that was a big life change for me. And I'll get to it why. But I was so happy that that happened to me. And I
Yeah.
was, A, because I wasn't in trouble. And A, what happens when I start believing in myself, even at that young age? And
On
so,
something also that like nobody is taught to do, right? I mean, we're taught to stand up for ourselves and speak up for ourselves, but not when it relates to like the court and the law and all those things. I think so many of us would just like shy away, and then we'd have to figure out a public defender of some sort. And here you are, like, no, I'm going to do it
yeah,
because I know I'm in the right. And you were.
I was.
It's
You had all these, authority figures too, and
right.
telling me that I was wrong and like you're in trouble. So that happened, and eventually I do graduate high school after 6 years with like a 1.046 GPA. I think my class rank is like 346 out of like 349, something ridiculous. And so, college is not on the horizon. Nothing's on the horizon whatsoever. And so I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I want to do something, So, but right out of high school, I get a job at like an oil change place. And,
Mhm.
and between me and you, Matt, and our listeners, I know nothing about cars. And so I'm working at this oil change place. And one day I'm sitting underneath the car, like changing some oil. And I think, not, I want to do something more with my life, but I wasn't sure what I can do. I was like, can a person who spends 6 years in high school, go to college? And I was like, I wasn't sure, but I wanted to find out. And so eventually I take the ACT to get into college, because obviously I didn't take it in high school because I was too busy, getting in fights and doing drugs. But I take the ACT and I do well enough that I get into college. And so this is my opportunity. This is my chance.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to mess this up. And so what I decided to do is I buckle down, and my first semester of college, I get almost a 4.0. And like, I was like, I knew it. And I freaking knew it. And so I'm
Yeah.
just very, very happy with myself. And so, my mom is pleased. She put like the Dean's List thing on the refrigerator back at home, because I moved out right away, because obviously I need to get away from Triple
Right.
B. But also, I'm doing a lot of this too to prove to Triple B I'm not a loser. You know what I mean? And I show
Mm-hmm.
him, that I made the Dean's List, because my mom still wants me to call him dad. I still think, he's my dad. Like, he's still in my life big time. And so he doesn't care. He doesn't care at all. And not at all. So it was.
Did you feel like you had to win his love, or did you want to, or do you just wanted to show him that you weren't who he said you were?
I think it was more a little bit of both. And when I was younger, I think I wanted him, like I wanted his love. But as I got older, I think I just wanted to show him, like, I'm not who you think I am. And
Mm.
so I think it kind of shifted
Yeah.
as I got older. And so eventually, so after I made the Dean's List, I decided to transfer schools. So I'm going to a different school, and I start partying up again, because I meet a whole new group of friends. And these weren't bad guys. They just weren't good for me at that time, because I kind of get right back into what I was doing in high school, just partying it
Right.
up. And the excuse I gave myself was like, oh, you're in college now. You're okay. You're doing okay.
Mm.
And so it's okay to do this. It's okay to
Yeah.
party and things like that. And obviously
Everyone does it, right?
right, exactly. And so my grades start dropping. Things aren't going so well. I'm on like academic probation. And then one day all my friends decide, let's go drink and do some day drinking down at the bar. So I go, okay. Everyone piles in my Jeep, and we drive down to the bars. And so we're doing something, we're drinking, we're doing something called Power Hour. You take a shot every time you hear some sort of
It's a
song
great
come.
idea.
Yeah, yeah. Great idea. So we're down there all day, and we decide, you know what? Let's go home and change so we can go back out. I go, okay, let's get my Jeep. Let's go. So as we're driving home, we're taking a left onto my street. I hit the gas, boom, run into a telephone pole, total my
Mm.
Jeep, put everybody in the hospital. I get arrested for DUI, reckless driving, and I'm thinking to myself, it's high school all over again. This is like
Right.
you're not doing great. You're not trying to do what you want to do with your life. And again, it's hard for me to rationalize. Everybody does this. And I was like, no, everybody doesn't get a DUI. Everybody doesn't put everyone in the car in the hospital. Luckily, they were all okay. But
Yeah.
I was like, this is not good. And so I get
Do you kind of go back to thinking, oh, Triple B is right?
all the time.
Is
That's
that
in the back of my head.
yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I was like, so it's kind of like a self fulfilling prophecy. It was like, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what I do. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
See? Yeah.
Yeah,
I have
exactly.
one
So
win and then three more loses, like
exactly, it's like you're exactly who you say I am. Because
mm,
and I didn't say this for like when I was growing up in high school, he would always call me a loser. All kinds of stuff.
yeah.
And so it
Right.
was like, yeah, it was kind of like, maybe he's right. But in my inside, I'm fighting that. I was like, he's not right. You know what I mean? But these things would happen. Like, maybe he is right.
Right.
Maybe he is
What is
right.
the universe telling me? Yeah.
Correct. And so I eventually, I have to go to some like a DUI diversion program, and like it's dropped, or I get less charged, and so I don't have to, go to jail or anything like that. And I eventually limp through college, and I do graduate with like a 2.02 GPA, but I have nothing on the horizon because I made no contacts. I kind of just partied through college, but I have a college degree. And again, Triple B, he doesn't care. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter, because it actually was at the time. I make it sound like it wasn't that big of an achievement. It actually was a big achievement that I got a college degree after 6 years of high school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so after what I've
I
been
mean,
through,
yeah. I mean, it's a big deal with all you're discussing. And like I said before, like people that grew up in those circumstances might not have done that,
right.
so there was still something in you that was lighting you up, making you go.
And so I wanted to again. So I knew I started to realize it's about who I hung around with, and who, how I'm spending my time's dictating how my life's going. And
Mm.
so after I graduated college, I decided to like run away. That is, I had an opportunity to go live in San Francisco, and I took that. So I drove out to San Francisco, and I worked out
Nobody
there.
knows me there.
Right. I worked out there, and it was kind of good because I was away from Triple B. I was away from like my old friends,
Mm-hmm.
but my mom would call, and she would like call on my birthday, like, "Oh, your dad wants to talk to you," and like so put him on, and so she was just driving this home
Mm-hmm.
all the time, and I'm still at this point where I don't think there's anything wrong. I think this I don't enjoy doing it, but I'm still doing it, right? But I'm out in San Francisco. I'm kind of getting things together. I'm getting my finances together. I'm trying to get my life together, and I'm bartending. Things are going great. And I was like, but you know what? I want to do more with my life. And I think about, high school. I think about, what can I do? And I think about that incident in where I represented myself. And I was like, could I actually do that in real life? Could I be a lawyer in real life? And I wasn't sure, but again, I wanted to find out. So I took the entrance exam to get into law school, the LSAT, and I did well enough to get into law school. And now I'm moving out to Michigan, and I'm going to Western Michigan Law School. And so now I know I do not want to mess this up. Again, just similar to what I did in my first semester in college. I was like, okay, you have this opportunity, Kyle. Let's not blow this opportunity. So now you're in law school. And so what I did was I found the two smartest kids that I could find and just stuck next to them
Mm-hmm.
all 3 years of high school. And it's very easy to find these kids because in law school, they're the ones who raise their hand every time the professor asks a question or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I literally hung next to those kids all 3 years. I and there was no dramatics that happened in law school because I was a very good kid, because you can't mess around in law school. And in college, you kind of
Yeah.
mess around and do well enough. In law school, if you're not studying and you're not going to class every day, you're going to fail out. And
Yeah.
so I made the dean's list one semester. I got the certificate of merit one semester. That's getting the highest grade in one of your classes. And I did well enough, better than I did in high school, obviously better than I did in college. And I was going to graduate law school. But in order to graduate law school, you have to take an internship. And so I just applied to internships in New York City because that's where I always want to live. So eventually I got an internship in New York City, and I hated every second of it. It was at this matrimonial law firm. It was a
Mm-hmm.
nightmare. I hated every second of it. And I was like, I'm not sure if I want to be a practicing attorney. And so that was in the back of my head too. Eventually, I did graduate law school. And again, Triple B, I was trying to prove to him that I'm not worthless. And at my high school or my law school graduation, this is what he told me, Matt. He goes, I would have lost a bet. That was his congratulations to me. And I started to come to a realization that I could find the cure for cancer. And this man, it didn't matter. So I started to get the mentality now, you know what, forget him, forget
Mm-hmm.
him. But again, I don't want to disappoint my mom either, because she thinks she wants me to, calm down and things like that. So,
Yeah.
I'll
How old are
text.
you around this time?
So I graduated law school in 2009. So I'm 46 now. So I'm around 30 years old, if I'm doing the math correctly, real quick. So somewhere,
It's a trick. It's
right,
a math podcast.
somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So, so
I get
now,
it though. I mean, the reason I ask is because like 30, some of us that have these traumas early on, we are still so attached to the perception of those that are deemed parents have of us. And I can see why that would still matter though. And, I think some people are like, why? Well, you're 30. Like what? But when you have those early things, it sticks around, and it probably
right.
still does. Even if you've worked through things, you still think of it and you're like,
Well, for
maybe when
sure.
I've done it
Well,
the same.
spoiler alert, Matt, my mom is still married to this man to
Mm,
this day, which is insane. And
yeah.
so, yeah, which is
But she comes from a different generation too.
correct.
And that generation there's
That's
different
right.
things that we work through. And like even our generation, we're just now pushing through things
Right.
that our generation wasn't used to, and we didn't grow up with, because we're like, oh, there is something we can do with ourselves. There is something that can
Right.
be better. We don't have to accept everything. And so, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your story. I was
No,
just
no. Yeah.
curious because I think that at 30, people that haven't experienced something like this, maybe they've had a more casual of lives moving forward. They're like, yeah, 30, I was already out here doing all these things and never even called my parents or never even talked to my parents, never even thought of them, whatever it may
Right.
be. And so I think it's interesting to me because I was very similar. I was into my 30s when I finally finished grieving my mom, and so it was like everything before that was thinking, what is my dad going to think?
Right. I bet.
He didn't care. I mean, he cared, but he didn't care.
Right. Yeah, he was. Yeah, exactly. Like he didn't want that to dictate how you were acting. Like what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I don't want you to think that I don't love my mom. Of course, I love my mom. And I'll
Of
get into
course.
this a little bit later. But like, and I'll get into this later. But I can't control her how she feels or how she reacts. I can just control how I feel and how I react and what I do and like moving forward. And I'll eventually tell you how I got to that realization. But again, now I'm just trying to make my mom happy. I do not want to disappoint her, and so I will keep talking to Triple B. I'll keep call him on Father's Day and things like that. So it's crazy. So
Yeah. Checking the boxes.
so now I have to take the bar exam, and in New York, you have to take something called the character and fitness exam. And in order to get admitted to the bar, so I took the bar exam, I passed the bar, but in order to get admitted, you have to take something called the character and fitness exam. That's where they do this huge background check on you. They take your fingerprints, they do like this FBI background check, and they find anything wrong, you might not get admitted to the bar.
Mm.
And I was actually terrified of this all 3 years of law school because I wasn't sure if I was going to actually be able to become a lawyer.
Because of your history.
Yeah, exactly. So I rationalized to myself, you know what? You'll just have a JD, Kyle. You won't even try to take your bar. And I wasn't even going to attempt to take the bar exam at all. But I was after I graduated law school, I was like, you've come this far. What are they going to do? Take your law degree away from you? Like, you already went through this far. Why not try to do this? So what I did was I flew back home to Ohio after living in New York City, and I went to all of the courthouses and police stations, got certified copies of all of my police records, and submitted it to the character and fitness board to see if I get admitted to the bar. And so the way they do it in New York is you have to get interviewed by a prosecutor or a member of the bar to see. Everybody goes through it. So the day of my interview, I'm in there, and there's dozens of law school graduates being interviewed, but they're only taking like 5 minutes. I'm in there for 2 hours waiting for someone to interview me. And I finally ask, what's going on? They go, oh, we're bringing in a special prosecutor for you. And so finally, finally this woman comes in and she has my file. And Matt, there's like red tape coming out of it, everything. And I'm like, here we go. This is like a worthless endeavor. And so finally we sit down and she starts going through this file and she goes, quite the file here. And I go, yeah. And then she pulls out this piece of paper and I was like, what are we going to talk about? Are we going to talk about my fighting? Are we going to talk about like my underage drinking? What are we going to talk about? And she saw, oh, I see you got caught speeding in Michigan, like while I was in law school. I was like, yeah. She goes, well, how do I know you're not going to do this going forward? And I'm thinking, this is what she's questioning me about. I go, well, I live in New York City now. I don't even have a car. So it's impossible for me. She goes, oh, I guess you're right. She had like a little laugh about it. She goes through the rest of my file. It doesn't really ask me any more questions. She goes, you're going to be a good an ethical attorney? I was like, yes, ma'am. And that was it. Stamped. I was admitted to the bar. And I was like, a great weight was lifted off of my shoulders because I bet. Really. And again, I thought that would fix everything too. I thought, okay, so look, see, and another reason
external validation.
Yeah. Another reason too, I wasn't going to go through the character and fitness evaluation. I was so worried that Triple B was like, yep, I told you couldn't do this. And so I didn't want to hear him saying that. So that was a big part of the back of my head.
Yeah. But then you also know that he's not going to care.
Right.
If you do.
Eventually, but I'm still trying. Right?
I know.
It's insane.
Humans. Yeah. It's not insane. It's, I would venture to say it's probably normal. I think that if anyone has that experience, I think they could relate. But it's funny, not funny, just like it's not insane that, we think, okay, well, it's going to validate him. But then we're also like, we know that even if it validates me, he's not going to validate it ever.
Right. Exactly.
And like, it's like an endless trial that you're on for yourself to try to get this and no win.
Right. But
I would assume. Well, maybe there was.
Yeah. But also like, I think part of that too is like, it started morphing into like, well, can you do it, Kyle? Can starting to see if you're capable of it. Like, John wants to see if I can do this, to prove to myself that I'm worthy of it. Cause I didn't feel worthy of a lot of things. So I was trying to, seek all these external validations to try and, fix me and try to say I am worthy. And so a lot of it too started shifting towards I'm doing it for me to prove to myself, hey, I'm worthy. Hey, world, look at me. I am good. So this is what I can do. Things like that.
Yeah, but it's like that. It's like that law scale with the scale. What is it?
The Lady of Justice with the
Yeah, that I'm thinking like, okay, well, is Kyle thinking like he's trying to prove it to himself, or is it really just this triple B that's just weighing everything down? Because as you tell your story, there's a lot of triumph. There's a ton of triumph as you talk about all the things that a lot of people probably wouldn't have been able to achieve that you did. Yet, and I can understand this as well, you seek the next stamp of approval. You seek the next, whatever it may be, like maybe one more thing will help.
Right.
One more thing.
Right.
And then another thing. And I
Right.
did the same thing. I totally get that. And so, but when you tell your story, and I hope you see this now, I'm sure you do, lots of triumph, lots of things that
absolutely
society would have excluded you from had you, like written you off, if you will, just like Triple B did, you know, and you did it. So
I was also searching, for the next thing. Like, I want to be good enough. I'm good enough. And eventually I realized Kyle, wouldn't have mattered if you didn't even graduate high school. You are good enough. Right. You were good enough back then. And so it takes a long time to get there though.
Yeah. But there was like, I still feel like early in that story, this still sounded like there was that fire in Kyle, like deeply buried, maybe like burning, that you knew you could do it and you had faith in yourself. It's just sometimes we're conditioned to do the other things.
Right. And I never had any, so that brings me to the next, I never really had anybody cultivate that spark. It was just always myself. I was doing it. So after I was admitted to the bar, I was like, well, you know what? I don't think I want to practice law. I'm open to it because I had such a bad experience of that internship. These guys were working like 80, 90 hours a week working in matrimonial law, and they hated every second of they were like making all kinds of money, but all they cared about was like billable hours, and they were miserable. And I was looking at them, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I was getting panic attacks when I was working with them. It was terrible. And so
I worked so hard to achieve all this, and this is what I end up with.
Right. And so I started to apply to alternative legal careers where you need a law degree, but you're not actually practicing. And I got a job at a company, at this education company, and the CEO and president is actually similar age to me and you. He actually kind of took me under his wing. This is the first time somebody like told me about like setting goals, about meditating, about reading the right books and things like that. And he really like blew my mind. And it was great because he was the same age as me, and he's running like this multi-million-dollar company. And he's like telling me, he's not saying it out loud. He's like, you can do this too. You can do something with your life too. Here's how I did it. Here's how to do it. And I still
worked for me.
And it was so life-changing. It was similar to Mr. Brady, but now I was ready to hear it. And he was this guy, his name's David. He actually gave me the tools to do it. Right. And so it was actually amazing. This is what I was craving for so bad. I was like starving for this. So I ate up everything he was telling me, and he really changed my life about, like I said, just setting goals about what I'm capable about, pushing the boundaries, getting out of my comfort zone, everything, you name it. And it really altered the course of my life. And I feel, and I understand not everybody has that person in their life, or I understand how lucky I was to run into this. Like, and
you worked your butt off to get there. So
I agree.
Maybe it was all predestined.
Maybe, but I'm so thankful for him, and so thankful for him at that moment. And so that was a huge thing that happened to me, and it was amazing. And I was just like, I just dove in all the way. And also around this time too, I got into running, and we can talk about running if you want, but running and ultra running became a huge part of my life. I'm a huge runner too, because I wasn't really a big exercise guy, but that was good to get like mental clarity and things like that. And so I was in New York City about 5 years, and I was like, you know what, I'm done with, not done with New York City, but I was like, it was time to move on. And so I moved back to Ohio, and this is around 2013, 2014. And that's where I'm at today. And when I moved back, I started a similar business where I was working for with David, and that kind of blew up a little bit, but enough where I was able to support myself. And it was actually great. It gave me a lot of free time too. But also I knew that I learned from David was, again, who you hang out with is going to dictate your future. So when I moved back to Ohio, I just started hanging out with all my running friends, like people who like to run, like people like to push themselves, people like to, have a good life and a healthy lifestyle. So I just met these great friends that I'm still best friends with today, and I was hung out with them every day. And I went on adventures out west. I bought like a conversion van, and I spent like 6 months out west, like traveling around, meeting a bunch of other people. And when I came back, and this is like one of the biggest life shifts that happened to me. And when I came back from that trip, I was like, you know what? I want to write about my life. I want to tell my story to the people.
Mm-hmm.
And what I thought my story was going to be like, oh, I spent 6 years in high school. I was a bad kid. I was bad. And I overcame this. And then as I was started writing, I was like, well, let's start at the beginning, Kyle. What is your first memory in your life? And I'm trying to think about my first memory. And it was when I was 4 years old, when I met Triple B. That was my first memory
Mm-hmm.
that I ever had. So I started writing this, and I started just crying, and I just started writing about how I grew up. And I wasn't even planning on writing any of this stuff.
Yeah.
But this was the first time that I realized how I grew up, and like how bad it was, and how serious it was, and the reasons why I became who I was. And it was really like hard at that moment, but it was amazing because now I know what happened, and now I can do something about it. Now I can change the narrative. I can change what's going on. Now it's like, oh, you happen to, you can, seek therapy. You can talk to people. Now you know why you act this way. Now you know why you tried to find those kind of friends that weren't good for you, and you're trying to prove something. But it was actually life altering. That was one of the biggest things that ever happened. I started writing this because I if you would have told me 10 minutes before I started writing, it was like, oh, were you, abused as a kid? I was like, no, my stepdad was just a jerk. You know what I mean? I would have said like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I would have said. But after this, it was crazy. And it just opened up a lot of things for me that obviously I had to work through, but it was just,
Yeah. You probably got messy for a little bit
oh, for sure. And I'm still,
in your head.
working on
Yeah.
it too. I'm not like
Yeah.
perfect, but it
You're
was,
not? Oh.
well, I'm sure that's what
That's what's coming off.
right.
Is like,
Exactly.
perfect. Yeah.
But
No, I think I think a lot, that was what happened to me in therapy, was a very similar experience, because I was going to therapy for like work just was like really crappy at the time. And then I started like emptying my story to her, and she's like, you realize that all the decisions that you've made since your mom died, you were making with that 8-year-old in mind, like the fear of that 8-year-old. And it was like you said, like the clouds parted, and like, oh, and then I was able to like connect all these dots of like all the things and decisions and poor decisions and things that I made over the years. And it just like comes, and then you're like, what do I do with all this? So I'm
right.
sure like as you're writing this on paper, you're like really, like,
Yeah.
did this really, like, could this be true?
Right.
Did you have any of those moments where you're like, this feels like it's a movie, not a Kyle's life?
Well, so after I wrote it all down, I was like, well, am I the only way it feels this way? So my brother and my sister grew up in the same household. So what I did before I published it, I shared it with them, and they read the whole thing, and they were like, it was eye opening to them too, because remember, my mom said, "This is your dad. This is love." And so we were all playing along this whole time. And once I shared it to them, they were like, "Oh my God, yes, this is exactly what happened. Like, this is what, our life was like. Like, not like thank you for like bringing this up, but like it helped them heal as well too, and way to move forward. It was
Did they face any similar challenges? Not that you have to give away their secrets, but did they face any like
not as bad as I did?
Yeah.
But
so it was just,
yeah,
you absorbed more of it, probably.
I maybe my brother like absorbed the meanness of him more than I did. I think I took it worse, but I don't know.
Because you were younger. You didn't have any memories before that.
Right. And I just
If
felt
that's your
alone.
first lasting memory.
Right. And so, when I told my brother that story, he said he had no idea that was your first memory, and so, but it was good to get validation that I'm not crazy, that I'm not making this, you know what I mean? And they were like, yeah, this is exactly what happened.
Right. Yeah. No, I could imagine if you told other people, they'd be like, that's, you're just,
right.
You're embellishing that, or, this, that, or the other, or you had control all along. And you're like, really? I was 4, and
exactly.
That's deeply embedded, those feelings and those things that happen around that time. Your story makes sense to me. I think there are people that it would not make sense. Like, right. and it wouldn't be validated, because they wouldn't be like, they'd be like, no, you could just, you can just change on your own. You can just stop doing that, Kyle. And you're like, I really wanted to, but that was just the way my life was turning out. It was just, I got myself into these situations. I didn't want to, but I did. And that's how it happened. And, like so many triumphs, like I said before, but I can imagine what that book was. It scary putting that book into the world? Because it's one thing to write it down,
yes,
and share it with your family, right?
Right, for sure. Well, because right when I published it, I shared it with my mom, and it did not go over well. Because
Did she tell you were wrong, or was she just?
No, she was like, well, okay. You know what she hangs on to? It's like, well, there were good parts of your childhood, right? Like that's what she hangs on to, and like that's what she like. She goes, I love you, and I do. I don't want my listeners to think I don't love my mom. I do love my mom, but like she grew up like at a different life, and it's just she wants to pretend, and I can't control the way she's going to heal. Like I want her to be happy, of course I do, but I need to focus. In order for me to help her out, I need to heal myself and focus on me. And if I didn't focus on me, then I would just be unhappy too, to my detriment, and then she would still be unhappy too. So what? And so I just need to focus on me healing, and I can't change anybody else. I just focus on what I can control and move forward.
Well, you experienced that as well. No one could change you either until you were truly ready to grab that toolbox that David gave you. You heard what Mr. Brady said, probably sat with you a little bit. You moved forward, but you weren't ready until you were handed the tools on how it would work for you. And the tools that were given you, that you were given, probably don't work for everybody. Right? Like you have to be ready and in the right place, right time. The universe was conspiring for you to, come across David and learn these things from him and see someone successful that's a similar age that you're like, oh, I could probably do that too. Like I could try these things, and you were ready to do it at that time.
Right.
Do you see it as that? Or do you think if you met David when you were 18, you would have taken those on?
No, it was the right time. Absolutely. Yeah. I was ready. I was craving it. It's like, what I forget what that saying is. The teacher will show up when the student's ready, or whatever. I don't know if I ever quoted that until today, but I guess that's what happened.
Well, it's true. I think from my own experience, I feel like until I'm fully aware of what I need, I won't accept any pieces. Like I have to be ready for therapy. I have to be ready for whatever for it to work for me. If someone had forced me at 22 into therapy because like you had to go or court ordered or something, I don't think it would have worked, because I would have been, I don't need this. What are you talking about? I'm fine, until I was like, oh, I'm not fine.
Right.
And then it was like, then it worked.
Right. And to answer your question, it still is scary putting the story out there, but I think it's pretty important.
That question.
But I think it's pretty important because it's selfishly, it's very healing for me. And also sharing my story, like I hear back from other people, it's like, oh my gosh, like this is similar to kind of what my story is. And also I always had this excuse in the back of my head, like, no, you guys don't understand. My story's different. You know what I mean? There's no healing or coming back from that or shifting from that. Like my story's different. But like, yes, everyone's story is different. But I never thought I'd be able to be where I'm at today. Like, years ago, because I always thought in my head, like, oh no, my story's just too messed up, and like too like my mom's still with this guy, so that's excuse you guys wouldn't understand. You know what I mean? And so I don't know where I'm going with this, but what I'm saying is it's just I stopped with the excuses, I guess.
Yeah.
And I knew there's something inside me that I wanted to put this story out there. And I'm just very glad that I did. And it still is scary today. So, people say, oh, once you put your story out there, everything's, rainbows and sunshine. It's not, I'm still healing. I'm still moving through this. And it's just, I'm trying to do my best.
But it's out of you.
Right.
I think that's a big healing piece. You're not keeping it all inside anymore, which is really tiring and really, and so just letting it out. I sometimes I talk to people and I'm like, sometimes I manifest these things in my head and they seem so scary. And then I say them out loud to someone. And I'm like, oh, that's not that bad. Like it feels like more powerful. And I would assume that putting your story to paper and then publishing it for the world to read, if they choose to, can be that fairly similar. Like it just gets it out of you. And now you can move forward with what you have created for yourself.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, my hope is like, it just heals some other people, or hopefully it helps other people too. So that was the main reason.
Are you finding that people that have read it are saying, I dealt with something similar, or, and then does that help you heal more to realize you aren't the only one that's gone through something so terrible in your
Yeah,
experience?
it reinforces that I did the right thing, putting it out there, and I'm glad it's helping other people. But now I know, I mean, I think I'm mature enough to know that other people have gone through these similar things, and I think it's good too. Like, we're so scared to like talk about these things, but we got to shine a light on like all this kind of stuff, like
Yeah.
even these bad things that we might be embarrassed or ashamed about. Like, we got to shine a light on it. It won't be, and then it won't hurt so bad. It won't have this power over us, because this had a power over me for so long. And then I was just like, I'm sick of it. But like, now it's out here. Like, now I'm just shining a light on it. It's like, you can't hurt me like the way you have been hurting, or keeping me back the way you have been keeping me back.
Yeah. No, there's power in normalizing some of these feelings that we have, because we are humans and we have all these feelings, and you probably have had all of them: sadness, shame, anger, all the pieces, that happiness, all the pieces that come with you. But our generation growing up, we were really, as guys, we're told like, you can show anger, which you did. You can show happiness if you want to. Happiness and anger. You weren't allowed to show people that you were sad.
Right.
You weren't allowed to show people that that you didn't have things under control, right? Like, I feel like we were just taught to be like angry or happy.
Right. Exactly.
Don't do anything else. But now that if we're like Kyle, I'm having a terrible day today, and that's okay. Like, I'll figure it out. I'm going to work through it, but I'm acknowledging it and putting it out loud and normalizing the fact that like, we can feel however we need to feel, because we're full humans, I guess.
Right. And I've gotten a lot of the tools. Like, what's helped me out too is like obviously writing, but now like, journaling. I don't know if you practice with journaling, but like journaling helps so much, because you just see patterns in there, and it's good to get all your thoughts out at the beginning of the day. And so that's helped me out a lot too.
Yeah. What makes you feel most like human these days?
Most human?
Yeah.
Well, like running makes me feel most human. That's where I feel most alive, just running out there. I don't listen to like music or anything like that. And usually I'm with my friends, but when I'm out by myself running in the middle of the woods or something like that, that's where I feel the most, because then I can see, how far what you're capable of doing. It's just you in the outside world. So that's what I love doing the most. Is
it like a thought cleansing
absolutely
experience for you too? Do you process thoughts, or you kind of erase and just run and do your thing?
I think it's more of a processing the thoughts,
Okay.
just going through things and just, going through life. And
it's like journaling without but
exactly.
running.
Yep. Exactly.
In a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just
no, I mean, that makes sense.
Meditative.
But you were running your whole life, right?
No, I just started running.
No, but like metaphorically.
Oh, there you go. Exactly.
Yes, and like, and now you're running with purpose. Now you're running because you choose to see how far you can go. Whereas your whole life you were running from triple B or running, like to the next thing that maybe can make everyone love you, maybe can impress everyone, maybe can show everyone that they were wrong.
Right.
And now you're like, now I'm going to just run because it helps me.
Well, I think so. Just to put it in another metaphor, I think I was running away from myself, as opposed to, I think I just turned around and started running towards myself, inside myself. And so I think that's a big thing that I did.
That little fire that I was like, you had some kind of fire. It's like, now you're like running to light it up even more.
Well, that's cool. That's the, the title of my book is Wandering Spark. And that's kind of like why I wrote, like, had that title, because I had that little spark inside me. It could have gone either way though. Like, I could have blew myself up, but it was a spark inside me that, flourished and blossomed.
Just for full disclosure to everyone listening, I choose not to know too much about the people that I speak to on the podcast. So I'm not like a jerk. I just don't want to know too much, because I really want these conversations to unfold in the way that they have. So I think it's interesting that I kind of saw that, and now that's your title. So
no, I appreciate it. Actually, it reinforces that it was a good title for me.
Yeah, so. It's the thing about your story is that although unique to you, it's probably, unfortunately, not unique to a lot of people in a similar, the way that they felt growing up and the way that affected them as they tried to go through each stage of life, if you will. But you did the right thing, in my opinion, by putting it out there for the world to see, so that other people can see, oh, he went through all this, but look what he's doing now. Look what he did for himself. Look how he turned this around. Maybe I can take one of those tools from his toolkit and try it in my own world to like make my life feel the way that feels most human, if we will. You know,
Right.
maybe it's not running, maybe it's not journaling, but maybe it's something that they read that you also do, and they choose to do that. So I think you've made that terrible situation into something that can be really valuable for other people, not just yourself.
Right. Thank you. So
Yeah. No, I think it's a similar vein to, I know you said like something about it was like somewhat selfish because it was healing in a way. For me, this podcast is somewhat selfish as well, because every conversation I have has this little element of healing that 8-year-old version of me that just felt like he was the only kid. And so it's just such a valuable experience and so relatable, in a terrible way, because humans shouldn't have to go through all these things that we go through. But I guess that's part of the journey that each of us has on
right.
this earth.
And I think us being in service to others, I'm sure in the book you're doing the podcast, I think that's really helpful too. Like selfishly it's fulfilling, but also being a service, just trying to help out as much as you can.
Yeah.
So,
and I think the more that we do it, like we discovered this decades into our journeys, right? But I think the more that we can do it, maybe the younger generations can pick that up early on, and then they don't have to wait till they're in their 30s and 40s to kind of really manifest the change that they want to see in themselves, but also in the people around them. So I think by what we're doing, I see that as the hope that comes from it.
that's my hope as well.
Yeah. So if people want to read your book and stuff, how do we get that?
So my book is
figure that out.
It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Wandering Spark is the title of it, and then all my social medias is Kyle V Robinson on all my social medias on everything.
Awesome.
So find me, say hi.
Well, yeah, definitely connect with Kyle. Before I let you go, I do want to ask you a question, and I'm trying to think of who, if this version of Kyle could go back to the version of Kyle that's sitting in school suspension and just like, how do I gotta be good and I have to make it through. And how do I figure that? Is there anything that you would want to tell him?
Well, so it's funny you say that. I actually have talked to him before, and I do, through therapy. I don't know if you're familiar with IFS therapy, internal family systems, where I do go back and I do talk to him. I have told him that, and just tell him that I am here for you. Somebody is here for you. And I talk to that 4-year-old more often, telling him that I am here for you. You are worthy, and like you are loved, because I didn't feel loved for a long portion of my life. And so I talk to them often, to be honest with you, and I let them know that I'm here for you. So just knowing that, they're still part of me, and they're just like, and just knowing that they have somebody, because growing up, I felt like I didn't have anybody. Like I felt like no one was there for me. And so I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know what I was looking for. And so it's nice to tell them that I am there for them. And, I'm an adult now, and you're going to be okay. And that I love you.
That is probably what that version of you needed to hear, because you were told what love was, but you weren't shown in a way that maybe you understand now as an adult, and the self-love and those pieces that come along with it. Yeah, it's so interesting. I think more people that I talk to too are doing what you do and have those conversations with those people. So I'm glad that you're doing that and you regularly do it. I think it's such a healthy practice that probably the 18-year-old version of you would not think was anything real,
Correct.
I think we would be like, what are you talking about? Why would you do that? But it's just such a valuable experience. So thank you for sharing your story in this way and the way that you do. And I look forward to reading your book and reading in between all the pieces that you probably had to skip over for this podcast. It's really an important thing you're doing. So thank you for that.
No, man, I appreciate you letting me share my story, and thank you so much. You're doing a great service here on your podcast. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. I will accept that. If you heard Kyle's story today and you know someone in your life that might benefit from hearing his story, we would love it if you would share this episode with them. That would be super valuable. If it helped you, reach out to Kyle. Tell him so. Tell him that you related to something that he said. I think he will also enjoy that. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and I will be back next week with a brand new episode of the Life Shift podcast. Thanks again, Kyle.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.